Good morning, Ms. Sazama, Forensic Science, which is, there we go, all about observations. So, first off, by the end of today, you should be able to describe the difference between what perception is versus what observation is. You should also be able to give me examples of things that influence your eyewitness accounts of everyday events, and you should be able to relate the observation skills to their use in forensic science. So, first off, we're talking about forensic investigators and crime scene investigators. Their primary jobs are to observe what they can find, interpret what those observations mean, so figuring out meaning from what they saw, and then being able to report that information in a court to either a jury or to a district attorney or to someone else who may not have been there at the time. So, observe, interpret, report are the three main jobs of a forensics investigator. Now, generally speaking, when you are in any situation, there's massive amounts of information coming at you at the same time, more so than your brain can usually handle. And so what ends up happening is that we filter out the information that we do not feel we need at the time. That filtering process leads you to your perception of something, which is how you feel about it combined with what you see. And that will go into your short-term memory, and from there only very little of it goes into your long-term memory. So we're looking at about a third of what you actually observe in a classroom or in any environment will actually make it into your long-term memory at most. So our brains selectively take in information. We unconsciously apply filters to the information, meaning we're not always aware of how we filter information, but we definitely do. Paying attention to the details in your surroundings actually requires a massive amount of conscious effort, and it can be very tiring to try and remember everything in an area at all times. The idea is to keep your head on a swivel, always be aware of your environment, and try to make sure that you're noticing as much as you possibly can to be a good observer. Especially in forensic science, we need good observers. So, perception is the way we understand or interpret what's happening around us. And so perceptions tend to be limited, they're often faulty, they're not usually accurate, and they're not always reflective of reality. So one of the examples that I like to give of this is my sister and I have the same memory of the same event, but we come at it from two completely different points of view. So we have two different perceptions of the same observations. And so, for example, this memory that I have, I grew up on a farm, and in the fall, it was a nice, crisp, cold fall day. The leaves were starting to fall. It was a little chilly out, and we were butchering chickens. And I remember this being a very happy sort of family farm memory. My dad was cutting off the chickens' heads, and their little bodies would run around for a little while, and then they'd stop, and my mom would grab them by the feet, dip the whole chicken into the scalding water to loosen up the feathers, and then she'd hang them, and my brother and I, it was our job to pull all the feathers off. So I remember this as being, a big family event and it being very positive and sort of wholesome. Whereas my sister, who's 6 years younger than I am, remembers this more like a horror movie. She distinctly pictures those chickens running around without their heads on. She swears there was blood spraying everywhere, and there might have been, but I don't remember that. So she has this very negative, horrible, oh my God, this was awful perception, whereas my perception was everybody does this at the farm, and I had this great family, wholesome sort of perception. So it shows you that we experience the same observations of the same event, but our perceptions were very, very different of that event. So anyway, that's my chicken story. Now, observations can be affected by emotional states. If you're already upset about something, then it's possible you're going to miss seeing important details in a situation. Or if you're really excited or you're really unhappy, those can really affect what you pay attention to. If you're alone or with a large group of people, you usually will remember things better if you're by yourself than if you're with a whole bunch of other people. You will simply have a better idea of your surroundings. If you're in a large area, like let's say there was a concert where there's tons of people, or you were on a farm with tons of animals, and so you're constantly trying to keep track of the other people or the other animals in your area, then you're not going to notice something else that doesn't fit with what you're trying to pay attention to. Um, Type of activity. If what's going on around you is a basketball tournament, then you may not notice something that was completely not related to the basketball tournament. So it depends on what activity is happening. If it's a lot of people around you, but it's kind of calm, you'll be more likely to observe your surroundings than if there's a lot of people and they're really excited or cheering or something like that. The more activity, the less likely you're going to be able to pull those observations out of your memory. So, in order to help you with this, we have set up a link to the Where's Waldo? It's a fun little activity. So this is Waldo over here. Whoops, didn't mean to click. This is Waldo over here. And Waldo is somewhere in this picture. And so the idea is that you find him. Notice there's a little play thing here. So it's actually a link to a website. And you can actually hit play, and what it will do is it will time you on how fast it takes you to find Waldo. And so you can zoom in and see if you can find him somewhere in this scene and see how long it takes you to actually locate Waldo in here. So it's just kind of a fun little way for you to practice being a good observer. So hopefully now you know the difference between observation and perception. You understand some of the things that affect observations, and you can see why being a really good observer and really aware of your surroundings would really help in the field of forensic science.